She was the only daughter of a billionaire. At just 6 years old, she was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive cancer. Doctors said there was nothing more to do. She had only 3 months to live. No treatments worked. No hope remained. Her father, a powerful and wealthy man, tried everything money could buy. But in the end, it wasn't a doctor or a scientist who stepped in. It was the family maid. What this woman did in secret, without asking for permission, and without expecting anything in return, left the father in tears. She risked everything to save a child who wasn't even hers by blood. And when the world found out, everything changed. This is the true story of how love, when it's real, doesn't need DNA, just courage. And sometimes the greatest miracles come from the most unexpected hearts. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. Maya was only 6 years old when the doctors gave her parents the news that would change their lives forever. She had been feeling tired all the time and was getting frequent fevers. At first, her father thought it might be something simple like the flu. But after several tests, the doctors found that Maya had a rare and aggressive type of cancer. They didn't know how it had started, but it was spreading fast. Her father, William, was shocked and confused. He couldn't believe this was happening to his little girl. The doctors started treatment right away. She went through chemotherapy and other therapies hoping something would work. But her condition kept getting worse. William was scared, but he tried to stay strong for his daughter. The medical center became their second home, and every day brought new challenges. Maya, though young, was brave. She didn't complain much. She just wanted to feel better again. The doctors didn't give up easily. They tried every treatment they could find. When chemotherapy failed, they moved to immunotherapy. When that didn't help, they looked for clinical trials. William used all the money he had to give Maya the best care. He was a successful executive and had the resources, but even with all that, nothing worked. Every time a new treatment started, there was hope. But soon that hope faded when the cancer continued to spread. William spent long hours at the medical center and barely went to work. He sat beside Maya's bed, holding her hand, reading her stories and watching cartoons with her. He wanted to make every day count. Deep inside, he carried a heavy guilt. His wife had died while giving birth to Maya, and now he feared he would lose Maya too. He wondered if he was cursed or if life was punishing him, but he never showed those feelings to his daughter. Maya had never met her mother. She had only seen a photo that stood on a wooden shelf in their living room. It was a picture of a smiling woman holding her pregnant belly. William told Maya that her mother was kind and beautiful. He shared stories about how they met, how much they loved each other, and how excited they were to meet her. Maya would sometimes stare at the photo and ask questions about her mom. She said she wished she could hug her just once. William always answered softly, hiding his pain. Maya seemed to understand that her mother was gone, but she never seemed angry about it. She simply accepted it as part of her life. Now, as her body became weaker, she asked fewer questions. She was losing weight and needed help to walk. Yet she still smiled when her father made jokes or when nurses brought her small toys. She tried to stay positive. Eventually, the doctors gave William the final news. There was nothing more they could do. The cancer had spread to most of Maya's organs. Her body wasn't responding to anything. The medical team met with William privately and explained everything. They told him that Maya had about 3 months left to live, maybe less. William couldn't speak at first. He felt numb. How could a little girl with so much life ahead be given such a short time? He asked if there was any chance, anything they hadn't tried. The doctors said no. They had done everything they could. That night, William sat in the medical center room with the lights dimmed, watching his daughter sleep. He tried not to cry. He thought about all the memories they wouldn't make together. No first day of school, no graduation, no wedding. It was too much to take in, but Maya the next morning had only one thing to ask. She didn't ask why she was sick. She didn't ask how much time she had left. Instead, she looked up at her father and said, "Can I have a birthday party?" William was surprised. He didn't expect that. Her birthday was coming in a few weeks. He asked her why she wanted one. Maya said she had never had a real party before. She wanted balloons, cake, music, and her friends from school. She wanted to wear a pretty dress and dance. William nodded and promised he would make it happen. He told her it would be the best party ever. That same day he started making calls. He spoke to the medical center staff, his friends, and the school. Everyone agreed to help. If Maya wanted a birthday party, then that's what she would get. William wanted to give her something special, a day that was only about joy without pain or sadness. As the days passed, Maya's condition continued to decline, but she remained excited about her birthday. She talked about the cake flavors she liked, the kind of music she wanted, and the games her friends could play. Her father watched her closely, amazed by her strength. Even though she was tired and in pain, she smiled whenever someone mentioned the party. The medical center allowed William to use one of the larger rooms for the event. Nurses and doctors helped decorate it with colorful balloons and streamers. Maya chose a princess theme. Her favorite color was purple, so everything was in shades of purple and pink. Friends from school made drawings and cards. One of her nurses brought in a small crown for her to wear. Maya laughed when she saw it. She said she would be the queen for one day. As the date approached, William felt a mix of happiness and sorrow, knowing what the party really meant. Since the day William's wife passed away, everything inside the estate changed. The house, once full of life, became quiet and cold. Every corner felt empty. The laughter that once filled the rooms was gone. Instead, the house was now filled with nurses and caregivers who came and went constantly. They took care of Maya's health, gave her medicine, and checked her condition. But they didn't stay long. It felt like no one truly belonged there. But one person did stay. Sarah. She had been hired when Maya was still a baby, just after her mother died. At first, she was only supposed to help with cleaning and some basic housework, but over time Sarah started doing more. She helped feed the baby, rocked her to sleep, sang lullabies, and stayed by her side when she cried. She didn't just work there. She became a part of Maya's life, someone who never left. As Maya grew up, Sarah became her constant support. She was there in the mornings, helping Maya get dressed and preparing her breakfast. She made sure Maya brushed her teeth and tied her shoes. When Maya had nightmares, Sarah would sit with her, hold her hand, and calm her down. She read stories at bedtime and made up silly songs to make Maya laugh. The bond between them grew stronger each day. William noticed it, but he never tried to stop it. He was often busy with work, trying to manage everything on his own after losing his wife. He didn't have the time or energy to be present all the time. Sarah filled that space. To Maya, she wasn't just a helper in the house. One day, when she was around 4 years old, Maya looked at Sarah and, without hesitation, called her Mommy Number 2. It wasn't something taught. It came naturally from love and trust. That name stuck. From then on, Maya always called her that. Mommy Number 2, can I have juice? Mommy Number 2, can we play a game? Sarah never corrected her. She smiled every time. It meant the world to her. Sarah had no children of her own, and her past was marked by deep pain. When she was younger, she had a little sister who got very sick. Their family was poor and couldn't afford the right treatment. Sarah watched her sister slowly get worse, and one day she was gone. That memory never left her. It stayed in her heart, buried but never forgotten. She had promised herself quietly that if she ever had the chance to care for a sick child again, she would do everything possible to make that child feel safe and loved. Maya became that child. Taking care of her was more than a job. It was a personal mission, something she was meant to do. Even when the nurses came and went, Sarah stayed. Some caregivers were good at their jobs. Others were distant. But Sarah was different. She sat beside Maya during treatments, wiped her tears when the injections hurt, and held her hand during scans. When Maya felt scared, she didn't call for the nurses. She called for Sarah. At school events, Sarah attended when William couldn't. She helped with homework and showed Maya how to write her name. Every drawing Maya made had 2 women. One was the mother she had never met, and the other was Sarah. The photo of her real mother still sat on the shelf, but it was Sarah who kissed her goodnight. brushed her hair and made her favorite meals. William sometimes struggled with this. He missed his wife deeply, and seeing Maya form such a strong connection with someone else reminded him of what he had lost. But even he couldn't deny how important Sarah was. William had set clear rules when Sarah was hired. She was not family. She was staff. She had her own room in the house and followed a schedule. But those rules faded over time. No boundary could hold back the love growing between Sarah and Maya. What started as a working relationship became something unspoken but strong. Sarah didn't ask for special treatment. She didn't demand to be seen as more than an employee, but she acted like a mother because that's what Maya needed. And William, though silent about it, became grateful for her presence. He saw how Maya smiled more when Sarah was around. He noticed how calm she became. Sarah filled the emotional space that no one else could. She gave comfort not only to Maya, but to the whole house. Her presence made the estate feel less like a medical center and more like a home again. Even with all the sadness surrounding them, everything Sarah did came from the promise she had made years ago. She had failed to save her sister, but she would not fail with Maya. Every medicine given, every meal cooked, every story told was her way of keeping that promise. She knew she couldn't cure the cancer, but she could give Maya joy, love, and peace. Sarah believed that love made pain easier to carry. She would sing softly when Maya couldn't sleep and sit beside her during the hardest days. Maya trusted her completely. In Maya's eyes, Sarah was a second mother, not by blood, but by choice and by care. That bond became unbreakable. Even as the days grew darker and the doctors gave grim updates, Sarah didn't leave. She stayed strong because she had made a promise. And Maya had become that promise, living and breathing. She was the reason Sarah kept going, and she would not let go. On the day of the birthday party, the house looked very different than usual. It wasn't fancy or full of expensive decorations, but it was warm and cheerful. There were colorful balloons taped to the walls, a long table with snacks, and a big pink cake with soft frosting in the center. Small paper hats, some already bent or tilted, were handed out to the kids. Maya sat in her wheelchair in the middle of the room, wearing a light pink dress that gently touched her knees. Her head was bald from the treatments, but her eyes were shining with happiness. She smiled every time someone gave her a hug or a small gift. A few of her classmates came, holding drawings and stuffed animals. Nurses stood nearby just in case, but no one talked about medical centers or medicine. For that moment, it was a normal birthday party, just like Maya had dreamed of. Sarah stayed close to Maya the whole time. She made sure her plate was filled with soft food that Maya could eat easily. She reminded her to drink water and helped her sit more comfortably in the chair when she looked tired. Sarah laughed with the children, handed out slices of cake, and wiped frosting from Maya's chin with a napkin. The guests saw her as part of the family, not just someone who worked in the house. William stayed near the door, talking to a few parents and watching everything. He didn't want to take away the spotlight from Maya, but he didn't want to miss a second either. Music played softly in the background, and the children played simple games that didn't require much movement. There was a small table with crayons and paper, and Maya drew for a while with one of her friends. Everyone tried to pretend it was just a regular party, but deep down they knew it wasn't. As the party started to slow down and most of the children had finished their cake, Sarah sat on the floor beside Maya. She had a small piece of cake in her hand and was feeding Maya tiny bites. Maya leaned her head slightly to the side and looked straight at Sarah. Her face was calm, but her eyes were serious. Then, in a soft and weak voice, she asked a question that made the world stop. "Am I going to live, Mommy?" she said. She didn't say Sarah. She didn't say my other mommy. She said Mommy because that's who Sarah was to her. The room went quiet. It was like the music had disappeared. The voices had stopped and time had frozen. Sarah didn't answer right away. She felt like the air had been knocked out of her chest. She looked into Maya's eyes, trying to stay strong, but inside she felt like crying. The question hurt more than anything Sarah had ever felt before. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to smile and tell Maya that everything was going to be okay, but she couldn't lie. Not to Maya, not after everything they had been through together. Her lips trembled and her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She reached out and held Maya's hand tightly. "You're very strong," she whispered, "and I'm right here with you." She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just stayed with her. Maya kept looking at her as if trying to understand what wasn't being said. Behind them, near the doorway, William had heard the question too. He couldn't move. He put both hands on his face and turned away. It was too much, hearing his daughter ask if she would live. It was the moment he had feared since the diagnosis. That question changed something inside all of them. Until then, they had been trying to act like everything was normal. They decorated the house, planned a party, smiled for photos, and tried to forget the truth. But in that one sentence spoken so quietly, Maya brought everything back into focus. She wasn't just a little girl celebrating her birthday. She was someone who understood more than anyone thought. She knew what was happening. She could feel her body getting weaker. She could hear the whispers. She wasn't asking because she didn't know. She was asking because she needed to hear it from the person she trusted most, from the woman she called Mommy. Sarah knew that answer would stay with Maya forever. She didn't have the power to change the outcome, but she could choose to be honest, gentle, and present. That moment would never go away. It was now part of who they all were. After that question, the party continued. But something had shifted. The kids played a little more quietly. The adults spoke in softer tones. Maya, though still smiling at times, seemed more thoughtful. She held Sarah's hand and didn't let go. William eventually walked over and kissed the top of her head, sitting beside her for the rest of the evening. No one mentioned the question again, but its weight was still in the room. It had changed everything. It was no longer about pretending. It was about making the most of the time they had left. That night, after everyone left, Sarah helped Maya change into her pajamas. She brushed her teeth, told her a bedtime story, and lay beside her until she fell asleep. William stood quietly in the doorway. The house was silent again, but now the silence wasn't cold. It was full of meaning because from that moment, everything had truly changed. Sarah did not sleep at all that night. After the party, after the question Maya asked, her heart felt heavy and her mind would not stop racing. She kept hearing that small voice asking, "Am I going to live, Mommy?" No matter how many times she closed her eyes, it came back. Lying in her bed, staring at the ceiling, Sarah felt something rise inside her, a need to act. She couldn't accept doing nothing. She needed to try something, anything, even if it seemed impossible. So, she got up, made some coffee, and turned on the old laptop that was kept in the kitchen drawer. She started searching online. At first it was general, new treatments for cancer, experimental medicine, clinical trials. Then she read about cases in other countries, about families who had traveled for help. Some stories were sad, some gave her a bit of hope, but she was looking for a miracle. As the hours passed, Sarah narrowed her search. She began reading about organ donations and transplants. She learned that in some rare cases, part of a liver could be taken from a living person and given to someone who needed it. It sounded dangerous and complicated, but she kept reading. The procedure required the donor and the patient to have a perfect match in blood type, tissue enzymes, and other genetic markers. It usually worked best between family members. Sarah knew she wasn't related to Maya, not by blood, but something inside her told her not to stop. She found a clinic nearby that did compatibility tests and offered liver transplant support. The next morning, without telling William or anyone else in the house, she made an appointment. She told the nurse she was doing it for someone very special. She wasn't sure they would even run the test, but they did. Then all she could do was wait. Waiting for the result was painful. Sarah went back to her daily routine, helping Maya, cooking meals, folding laundry, and cleaning rooms. But her mind wasn't focused. Every hour felt like a week. She checked her phone constantly, hoping for an email or call. A few days later, she received a message from the clinic asking her to return. Her heart beat faster than ever. She took a deep breath, told William she needed a personal day off, and left the house early. At the clinic, they handed her a white envelope with her name on it. She opened it with shaking hands. The numbers and words inside didn't make sense at first. Then the doctor entered and explained it all in a calm voice. Sarah was a full match. Perfect blood type, perfect enzymes. Everything needed was there. She sat still for a long time, not saying a word. It didn't feel real, but it was. Tears filled her eyes. She couldn't believe it. The doctor said it was extremely rare, especially between people who weren't blood relatives. But the results were clear. Sarah's liver could help Maya, maybe even save her. She thought about what that meant. The surgery was risky. She could face health problems after, but none of that scared her. What scared her was losing Maya without trying. She thanked the doctor and left the clinic holding the papers close to her chest. She didn't know what to do next. She was just a housekeeper. Would they even allow her to donate? Would William agree? Would the doctors approve? A small voice in her mind said, "No, rules, systems, procedures." But she also knew something stronger than all of that. Love. She didn't care what the world saw her as. She knew what she felt. Maya wasn't her boss's daughter anymore. Maya was her child. Sarah went home and sat alone in her room. She stared at the walls and thought deeply. If she told William, he might say no. He might think she was acting emotionally or trying to cross a line. But Sarah wasn't acting out of impulse. She had cared for Maya for years. She had seen her first steps, held her during fevers, calmed her after nightmares, and sat beside her during medical center visits. That was not just a job. That was a mother's role. And now she had a chance to give something no one else could. It wasn't about duty anymore. It was about love, about doing what needed to be done. Sarah made up her mind. She would go to the medical center alone and speak to the transplant team. She would fight for the chance to give her part of her liver to Maya. If they said no, she would keep trying. She was not stopping. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Medical centers had rules. Legal systems had forms. William had authority as the legal guardian. But Sarah was ready to push through every wall. Maya wasn't a patient to her. She wasn't a job. She was a daughter, not by birth but by bond. Sarah knew that parents make sacrifices. Some give time, some give money, and some, like her, would give a piece of their own body if it meant their child could live. She folded the test results carefully and hid them in a drawer. For now, she would keep them secret until she found the right moment. She took a deep breath and looked at a photo of Maya on her dresser. "I'm not going to let you go," she whispered. Not without a fight. In her heart, she had already made the decision. The impossible was no longer a barrier. It was simply the next step. Sarah walked into the medical center that morning with a mix of fear and determination. She had the envelope with her test results folded neatly in her bag. Her hands were sweaty and her heart was beating fast, but she knew she had to try. She sat across from two doctors in a small office and told them everything. How she had cared for Maya since she was a baby, how she had gotten tested in secret, and how the results showed she was a perfect match. She explained she was ready to go through with the transplant. She didn't want money or recognition. She only wanted Maya to have a chance, but the doctors interrupted her before she could finish. They said no. They told her that medical center policy didn't allow transplants from people who had no legal or blood connection to the patient. It didn't matter that she loved Maya. Rules were rules. Sarah was stunned. She tried to explain again, thinking maybe they didn't understand. She told them how Maya called her mommy number 2, how she had raised her, how this wasn't about being a worker, it was about being a mother. But the doctors were firm. They said they were sorry, but the legal risk was too high. They said it could cost them their licenses. Sarah left the medical center with shaking hands and tears in her eyes. She hadn't expected a yes right away, but she hadn't expected a flat no either. When she got back home, she told William everything. At first, he didn't speak. He looked at her with disbelief, trying to understand what she had done. Then, suddenly, his face changed. His voice cracked as he said, "Don't ever bring this up again. Please, you're all Maya has. I already lost my wife. I can't lose you, too." She knew William cared about her and respected everything she had done for Maya, but his reaction also showed fear. He was scared of losing her, of something going wrong during the surgery. He wasn't thinking like a father desperate to save his child. He was thinking like a man who had already lost too much and didn't want more pain. Sarah tried to explain again, but William wouldn't listen. "This isn't your fight," he said. But that was where he was wrong. It was her fight. She had promised herself long ago that she would do everything she could to save a child if given the chance. And now she had that chance. Maya wasn't just someone she helped raise. She was family, blood or no blood. So Sarah made a decision. If the medical center wouldn't help her, she would find someone who would. Somewhere in the world, there had to be a way. That night, Sarah went back to her laptop. She sat on the floor of her bedroom, the test results beside her, and began to search again. This time she didn't look for local options. She focused on clinics and medical centers in other countries. She searched for living donor liver transplant, no legal family, urgent pediatric cases, and other terms that might lead somewhere. After hours of searching, she found a medical center overseas. It had a reputation for accepting difficult and extreme cases. The stories on their website showed hope where others had said no. She filled out a form, attached the test results, and wrote a long message explaining who she was, who Maya was, and what she was willing to do. She expected to wait days, maybe weeks. But the next morning she received a reply. A doctor named Dr. Roberts asked to speak with her directly. He had read everything and he wanted to help. Sarah scheduled the video call and spoke with Dr. Roberts from her bedroom using an old phone propped up by a stack of books. He was calm, kind, and listened without interrupting. His face showed something different than the other doctors. When she finished, he paused for a long moment before speaking. Then he told her something she didn't expect. He had lost his own daughter years ago to liver disease. She had been on a transplant list for months, but died before a donor was found. Since then, he had dedicated his life to saving other children. He told Sarah that he believed in what she was doing. If she was healthy and ready for the risks, he would accept her as a donor, no matter what her job was or whether she had legal ties to the child. He explained that everything would be done carefully, but in secret, to avoid problems. Sarah knew this was her only chance. She agreed right away. She asked no questions about travel or money. She said she would figure it out. Dr. Roberts promised to help with the paperwork and guide her through the process. The surgery would be dangerous. She could get sick. She could even die. But none of that scared her anymore. What scared her was letting Maya slip away without trying everything. She didn't tell William yet. She knew he would try to stop her again. This time she wasn't asking permission. She was making a choice a mother makes. She kept the plan to herself, carefully organizing each step. She would need time, courage, and luck. But one thing was certain. If she didn't do this, she would never forgive herself. She looked at a photo of Maya on the wall and whispered, "I'll do this, baby, no matter what." And she meant it. With William away on an international business trip, Sarah knew this was her only window to act. She had already prepared everything in secret. The documents were signed, the travel plans confirmed, and the medical center overseas was ready. She waited until the second day of William's trip to move. That morning she packed 2 small bags, one for herself and one for Maya. She told the staff at home that she was taking Maya for a private health consultation, which didn't raise suspicion because she was always involved in the girl's medical care. A trusted nurse who was aware of the real plan helped her arrange transportation. The flight was long and tense. Maya was tired but calm. She didn't understand everything, but Sarah told her they were going somewhere special to get help. They arrived late at night and the foreign medical team greeted them at a quiet private wing of the medical center. Sarah checked into the medical center under false names, as instructed by Dr. Roberts' team, to avoid attention or interference. Everything was handled with precision. Doctors examined both Sarah and Maya once again to make sure everything was still in order. The surgery was scheduled for the next day. Sarah barely slept that night. She sat beside Maya's bed, brushing her fingers through the child's hair as she watched her sleep. Maya still didn't know the full truth. She only knew that Sarah had promised to do something to help. Before dawn, Sarah wrote a short letter and sealed it in an envelope. She placed it under Maya's pillow. It said, "If I don't wake up, know that Mommy said yes." She didn't want to scare the girl, but if something went wrong, Maya had to know that this was her choice, made from love, not fear. Her mind was calm. She was ready. Early in the morning, the medical center team moved quickly. Maya was taken to one operating room. Sarah was taken to another, just steps away. The halls were quiet. No reporters, no questions, no family members, just doctors and nurses focused on the task. Dr. Roberts oversaw the procedure himself. The team had rehearsed everything. The plan was to remove a healthy portion of Sarah's liver and immediately transplant it into Maya's body. Timing was critical. Once the liver segment was taken out, it had to reach Maya within minutes. Both patients were placed under anesthesia. The machines beeped steadily. Outside the rooms, no one would have guessed how serious things were inside. The surgeries began. Blades moved. Hands worked carefully. Hours passed like minutes. Everyone in the operating rooms moved with urgency, but not panic. They all knew what was at stake. The silence inside was only broken by instructions from the lead surgeons. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, William was finishing a meeting when his phone rang. He almost didn't answer, thinking it was just another update from his office. But the number was unknown, and something told him to pick up. The voice on the other end was from the International Medical Center. The woman spoke calmly but seriously. "Your daughter is currently in surgery," she said. William stood up so quickly that his chair fell over. He didn't understand. What surgery? What medical center? The nurse gave him the full name and location. She mentioned Sarah's name, and that's when William realized what was happening. His heart dropped. He hung up and booked the first available flight, not even stopping to pack properly. He didn't care how long the flight was. He didn't care what it cost. All he could think about was Maya and Sarah. He had told her not to do this, and she did it anyway. By the time William landed, the procedure had already ended. He rushed through the airport, barely going through customs before jumping into a taxi. At the medical center, he pushed through the doors and asked for both names. The nurse at the desk pointed him to the intensive care unit. When he walked in, the room was dim and quiet. There were 2 beds. One held Maya sleeping peacefully, her tiny hand wrapped in a bandage. The other bed held Sarah, still unconscious, pale, but alive. Machines hummed quietly beside them. William walked between the beds, stunned. He stood there, taking in the scene. It was the first time he had ever seen what true sacrifice looked like. Not in words, but in action. Maya's heartbeat was steady. Sarah's vitals were stable. 2 hearts that once only shared affection now shared something deeper. Blood. William felt tears run down his face. No words came out. He just watched. William sat between them for hours. Nurses came and went. Doctors updated him with cautious optimism. The transplant was successful. Both patients were still recovering, and the next few days would be critical. But for now, things looked good. William read the letter Sarah had written. He opened it with shaking hands. "If I don't wake up, know that Mommy said yes." The words hit him harder than anything else ever had. He finally understood the depth of what Sarah felt. She hadn't done this for gratitude or approval. She did it because she truly was Maya's mother. Not by law, not by blood, but by love and action. William sat back in the chair holding both their hands, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something close to peace. He saw what no one else had seen before. In that room, there were no titles or roles, just 2 hearts connected, now forever, by the same blood. After 13 long hours inside the operating room, the doctors finally stepped out. Their faces were serious and tired, but there was something different in their expression, something calm and quietly hopeful. They had done everything they could. The lead surgeon removed his gloves and gave a slow nod to the nurse waiting in the hallway. William, who had been sitting on a bench just outside the room, stood up quickly. He looked at the team, searching for a sign, afraid to speak. The doctor approached him and said, "The surgery was a success." William froze for a second, trying to process the words. The liver transplant had gone well. Maya's body had accepted the new organ. No signs of rejection so far. Her breathing was steady. Her fever was starting to drop, and her heartbeat was strong. Everyone knew this was only the first step, but it was the step they had all prayed for. Maya was moved into the recovery unit, surrounded by machines and soft blankets. Nurses checked her every few minutes. She looked peaceful, as if simply asleep. On the other side of the hallway, Sarah was in a separate room. Her surgery had also ended, but her condition was more fragile. Doctors had placed her in an induced coma to help her heal slowly. The trauma of the operation was intense, and her body needed full rest. William visited both rooms, walking back and forth with tired steps. When he entered Sarah's room for the first time, he couldn't hold his emotions. He looked at her pale face, the wires, the machines, the silence. He dropped to his knees beside the bed. She had done something no one else even considered. She gave away part of her body for a child she didn't give birth to. For William, this was no longer just loyalty. It was love, real and complete. The next few days were slow and emotional. Nurses moved carefully, checking signs, adjusting medications. Doctors spoke in calm voices, explaining what could happen next. Every hour mattered. William barely left the medical center. He stayed in the waiting rooms, drank bad coffee, and read the same pages of a book without understanding any of it. On the third morning, something happened. A soft voice called out from the bed, "Daddy." It was Maya. Her eyes were half open and her voice was weak but clear. William rushed to her side. Her cheeks had color. She blinked slowly, then smiled. "Can I have cake?" she asked. William laughed and cried at the same time. He couldn't believe it. The doctors came in and checked her. Her body was responding better than expected. Her recovery had truly started. But soon she looked around and asked, "Where's mommy number 2? And that question hit William harder than anything else that week. He sat beside her, holding her hand, but didn't know what to say. He thought about telling her the truth, but the words wouldn't come out. How could he explain to a child that the person she loved most in the world was still asleep and might not wake up soon? So he just said, "She's resting, sweetheart." "She's very tired." Maya nodded, trusting him. But William knew he couldn't hide the truth forever. That afternoon he went back to Sarah's room and sat beside her again. He told her everything. He spoke out loud even though she couldn't hear him, or maybe she could. He told her how Maya smiled, how she asked for cake, how she wanted to see her. He said thank you over and over again. He held her hand and stayed there for hours, just listening to the soft rhythm of the machines. That room had become the center of his world. People who worked in the medical center started to hear the story. A woman who gave part of her liver to a girl she didn't give birth to. A caregiver who became more than family. Nurses talked about it in the halls. Some cried while changing shifts. The doctors, who were used to dealing with cold numbers and difficult outcomes, quietly admitted they had witnessed something rare. Not just a complex medical case, but a true act of sacrifice and love. Maya kept getting stronger. She ate small meals, sat up slowly, and even laughed once when a nurse made a silly face. But she kept asking about Sarah. Every morning, every evening, the same question. "Is she awake yet?" William promised to let her know the moment it happened. He stayed close to both rooms, waiting for the second miracle. Not just the saved child, but the woman who had saved her. And then it became clear to everyone around them something had changed. The medical center room that once felt like a place of sadness and fear now felt like the beginning of something new. What was supposed to be a tragic ending had become the start of recovery. Maya's life had turned around. Her body had accepted the new liver. She was healing faster than expected. And even though Sarah was still in a coma, her vital signs were strong. The doctors were hopeful. The staff looked at William differently now, not just as a man with money or a job title, but as someone connected to a woman who gave everything and a little girl who fought to live. They were not just patients anymore. They were a story of love, courage, and second chances. And in that quiet medical center, everyone could feel it. A tragedy had begun to turn little by little into a miracle. 5 days after the surgery, something happened that everyone had been hoping for. Sarah opened her eyes. It was slow at first. She blinked a few times, confused, trying to focus. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of the monitors. Her body was weak and her head felt heavy, but she was awake. Her vision cleared slowly, and the first thing she saw made her heart jump. It was Maya. She stood beside the bed wearing a paper hat from the medical center's kids' playroom. Her smile was wide and full of joy. "Mommy number 2, I'm alive," Maya said loudly. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak, but no words came out. She just cried. The moment was too big, too full of emotion. After everything they had been through, the planning, the fear, the surgery, Sarah had made it, and so had Maya. They were both still here. Nurses rushed in when they saw Sarah was awake. One of them quickly checked her vitals, adjusted her IV, and gently asked her to stay calm. The doctor came in moments later and gave her a soft smile. He explained that the surgery had gone as well as anyone could hope. Her body had reacted positively. She would need time to recover, but the most dangerous part was over. Maya had been visiting every day, sitting beside Sarah, waiting for this exact moment. She had drawn pictures, told her stories, and even fallen asleep in a chair once. Now seeing her awake made Maya even more energetic. "I told everyone you were just resting," she said proudly. Sarah couldn't stop crying. Her arms were too weak to hug, but she reached out her hand, and Maya grabbed it with both of hers. They stayed like that for a long time, not talking, just holding on tightly. Later that day, the doctors brought in new test results. This time, they were not just about the liver transplant. They were checking something bigger, how Maya's body was responding now that her liver was working. The results made everyone pause. The cancer, which had once been spreading fast, was now shrinking. The new liver was not just functioning, it was helping the medications finally work. The treatment was doing what it hadn't been able to do before. It was a medical surprise. No one had expected such a quick response. The medical team was cautious but excited. They said they had hope now, real hope. Maya was still sick, and there was still a long road ahead. But for the first time, the road didn't lead straight to the end. Sarah listened quietly as they explained everything to William. She felt relief, like a heavy load had been taken off her chest. Her sacrifice was working. That evening, William came into Sarah's room alone. He was holding something in his hand, the letter she had left behind. It was folded and slightly wrinkled, but he had read it more than once. He stood by her bed, looked down at her for a moment, and then slowly sat in the chair beside her. His voice was low. "You saved the only person who gave me a reason to keep going," he said. "I don't know how to thank you." Sarah blinked slowly, still tired, but her eyes filled with tears again. She didn't need thanks. She had never done this for recognition. She didn't ask for permission or praise. She had done what she felt in her heart. William stayed by her side for a while, talking softly about Maya, about the recovery, about what could come next. For the first time, he didn't speak as a boss. He spoke as a father. Word about what happened began to spread. First, it was inside the medical center. Nurses told other nurses. Doctors shared the story in the staff lounge. Then someone from a local clinic mentioned it to a reporter. Soon newspapers and blogs picked it up. The nanny who gave part of her liver to save a child. Headlines like that started to appear. Journalists called the medical center. A few even waited outside hoping for a picture or an interview. But Sarah wasn't interested in any of that. She asked the staff to keep her recovery room private. She didn't want lights, microphones, or strangers asking questions. Every time someone mentioned the story, she would say the same thing. "I don't want to be famous. I just want her alive." To her, this wasn't a miracle to be told on the news. It was a personal choice, A quiet act of love, nothing more. Inside the medical center, the atmosphere had changed. Nurses smiled more. People who passed Sarah's room often peeked in with admiration, but she didn't care about any of that. Her eyes were always on Maya. She watched her play with a toy, eat a small meal, or draw on paper with crayons. Maya laughed again. Her face had color again. She was recovering. That was all that mattered. Sarah, though still tired and in pain, felt full inside. She had done what she came to do. She had given Maya a new chance. It wasn't over. The fight wasn't finished, but the future no longer looked like a dead end. William stood at the door one morning watching the two of them together. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Everything had changed and everyone knew it. And as Sarah held Maya's hand, she smiled and thought, "This is enough. This is what I wanted." What started as a few quiet whispers in the medical center became national headlines. Soon, international news channels picked it up. Television shows, websites, and social media platforms were all talking about the same thing. The woman who donated part of her liver to save a child who wasn't biologically hers. News anchors called it an act of pure love. Interviews were requested. Magazine covers displayed illustrations of Sarah and Maya, even though Sarah had never posed for a photo. Campaigns for organ donation were launched, inspired by the story. In just a few days, the case became a global conversation. People from different countries sent letters, messages, and even small gifts. Sarah was mentioned in medical conferences. The act of one woman had reached millions. But while the world watched, talked, and debated, Sarah stayed quiet, choosing to focus not on fame, but on Maya. As the attention grew, so did the public discussion. Doctors around the world spoke out. Many praised the act, calling it brave and selfless. Some said it reminded them why they became doctors in the first place. But others raised questions not about Sarah, but about the systems that had failed before her. Why had she been denied in the first medical center? Why did rules prevent someone so clearly willing and compatible from donating? Investigations began. Journalists dug into medical center policies and found that Sarah's case wasn't the only one. Over the years, many other living donations had been rejected due to overly strict rules about legal or blood ties. Several lives could have been saved but weren't. A government health committee opened a formal review. Medical center staff members gave statements. One of the directors who had signed the rejection letter in Sarah's case was placed on leave. His name was removed from the medical center website. Change was starting. Medical institutions were now being pushed to rethink their protocols. A few medical centers changed their policies immediately, adding emotional bonds to the list of acceptable donor criteria. Experts began writing papers using Sarah's case as a real-world example of why compassion should be included in medical decision-making. Online forums exploded with praise. People who had never met Sarah were calling her a hero. She was described as a symbol of moral courage. Posts about her were shared thousands of times. Artworks were created. Her name became associated with organ donation advocacy in multiple countries. Several large health foundations wanted to honor her. Invitations came for award ceremonies, dinners, even television talk shows. But every time someone reached out, Sarah said the same thing. "Thank you." But no. She didn't want a stage, a trophy, or applause. That wasn't why she did what she did. She didn't save Maya to become someone special. She did it because Maya was already special to her. Meanwhile, Sarah continued with her normal life the way she liked it. She stayed away from cameras, from lights, from questions. She didn't even tell most people about the news coverage. She just focused on Maya. They went on short walks in the morning, enjoying the sun. They played board games in the garden behind the house. Sometimes they painted together or made up silly songs. Maya's strength returned little by little. Her appetite improved. Her energy increased, and her laugh came back louder each week. Sarah took joy in every little sign of progress. One more step walked. One more spoonful of food. One more clean scan. William also began to change. He worked less, stayed home more, and spent more time with them. The estate, once quiet and cold, felt like a home again. But for Sarah, the best part of every day was watching Maya just live without tubes, without beeping machines, without fear. One afternoon, William showed her an email. It was an offer from a well-known international medical foundation. They wanted to fly Sarah to a global health summit to speak about her experience. Everything would be paid for. She would be presented with a humanitarian award in front of thousands of people. William said it was a chance to inspire others. Sarah smiled kindly and shook her head. "I'm honored," she said, "but I've already gotten my reward." She looked out the window where Maya was playing with a ball. "She's alive. That's all I ever wanted." William didn't argue. He understood more than anyone. He knew what it meant. The story could go on without her. The world could talk and share and remember. Sarah didn't need to be part of that. Her place was here with Maya. That was what mattered. Let others write articles and hand out medals. She just wanted to make lunch and fold laundry. To some, her decision to step away from the spotlight was strange. Why not accept the awards? Why not share the story firsthand? But to Sarah, none of that mattered. The world could call her brave, selfless, heroic. She didn't care. The only title she cared about was Mommy Number 2. That was the only name that made her heart full. She had done something no rule book could explain, no system could measure. She gave a part of herself literally to a little girl who called her Mom. Now that little girl was alive, healing, laughing. For Sarah, that was the miracle. That was enough. She didn't want fame. She didn't want her name in history books. She wanted Maya safe, happy, and growing. And now she had that. She had the peace of knowing that real love, when it's true, doesn't need to be seen. It just needs to be lived. And that kind of love never dies. 1 year later, the living room looked completely different from the quiet medical center rooms of the past. It was decorated with colorful balloons, streamers, and drawings made by children. A large birthday cake sat on the center table covered in pink frosting and topped with the number 7. Maya stood in front of it, surrounded by her school friends, cousins, and neighbors. Her cheeks were full of color, her smile was wide, and her hair, once gone because of treatment, was now growing again in soft curls. She wore a yellow dress and a small paper crown. The guests counted down together. 3, 2, 1. Maya took a deep breath and blew out the candles. Everyone clapped. William stood near the doorway with a camera in hand, filming everything. He laughed, his face proud and peaceful. This was more than a party. It was a celebration of survival, a reminder that Maya had made it through. Sarah stood right beside Maya, holding her hand gently. She wore a simple blue blouse and jeans, her eyes shining as she watched Maya laugh and eat cake. Throughout the past year, Sarah had stayed close, helping with appointments, medicine schedules, and school days. She had healed slowly from the surgery, but her focus had never been on herself. It was always on Maya. Now, seeing her so full of life again, Sarah felt something deep inside her, a sense of quiet joy, of something complete. She helped pour juice for the kids and made sure everyone had a slice of cake. Several guests who knew the full story gave her soft smiles or small hugs. But Sarah didn't want to talk about the past. She just wanted the day to be perfect for Maya. The music played, the children danced, and for a while no one talked about medical centers, doctors, or pain. Only happiness. At one point during the party, Maya stopped playing and turned to look at Sarah. Her voice was soft but serious. "Mommy Number 2, now I'm really going to live, right?" The question wasn't asked out of fear. It was asked out of hope, out of the need for confirmation. Maya had been through so much at such a young age. Even now, with her strength returning and her laughter louder, she still remembered the hard parts, the needles, the machines, the long nights. Sarah knelt down slowly, her knees aching a little, and brought her forehead to touch Maya's. She placed her hands gently on the girl's shoulders and looked straight into her eyes. "Yes, my love," she said calmly with a warm smile. "You are going to live." Maya smiled, then hugged her tight. Around them the party continued. Balloons bouncing, kids laughing. But for them, That quiet moment meant everything. William had captured that exchange on camera. He stopped recording for a moment and lowered the device. Watching them, he felt his throat tighten. In the past year, he had changed too. After almost losing Maya and witnessing Sarah's sacrifice, he'd become a different kind of father. He spent more time at home, was more present in the small things. He no longer let work take over every hour of the day. Seeing Maya grow stronger had given him a reason to slow down and appreciate life more. He had also grown closer to Sarah. Their connection, once based on employer and employee roles, was now built on trust, respect, and something that didn't need a name. He knew she had saved his daughter, not just with surgery, but with love. And today he didn't see two people standing by the cake. He saw a family, a real one, formed not by blood, but by choice. As the party continued, people moved in and out of the house. Some brought gifts, others stayed for cake and snacks. Laughter echoed through the halls and music played from a small speaker on the table. In the living room, something special stood near the bookshelf. A simple wooden frame placed carefully next to a family photo. Inside the frame was the letter Sarah had written before the surgery. "If I don't wake up, know that Mommy said yes." William had decided to display it where it could be seen, not for attention, but as a reminder. Every person who read those words understood what they meant. That love didn't need approval. That being a parent had nothing to do with last names or birth certificates, and that sometimes the most powerful decisions are the quiet ones made in the dark, out of pure love. That letter had become part of their home. As the sun began to set, the kids sat in a circle opening presents. Maya laughed out loud as she unwrapped a puzzle, a doll, and a drawing kit. Sarah sat on the couch nearby, watching her carefully. Every laugh, every hug, every little joke between the children felt like a gift. Maya wasn't just alive. She was living fully, loudly, happily, and that was everything Sarah had ever wanted. She didn't need medals, praise, or stories written in newspapers. She had already received the only reward that mattered. Her daughter of the heart was here, growing, smiling, dreaming. The fight had been worth it. The pain, the fear, the risk, all of it. Because in the end, the answer to Maya's question was now a promise. Yes, you will live. And nothing could be more true. The room was full of light, and the letter in the frame kept reminding everyone, love, real love, is enough. Finally, we've reached the end of this story. I'm extremely happy that you've made it this far. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.